Success happens pretty much every day. It's not a destination. E plus R equals O. The event plus your reaction gives you your outcome. You have to fail for success. When I found my career, that's when I got into payments. I'm a massive payment nerd now. I love how complicated payments are. I reached out, and he's the CEO and founder of Form3, which is a payments fintech. I started with them, built out their whole operational function from scratch with some great people. I wanted to make myself uncomfortable. Work in financial services, I'm typically the only woman. The company I work for now is incredible. We're about 40% women, and that's a tech company, a financial tech company. When I met Mike, my husband, he is somebody who just understands me and elevates me every day, and you don't realise how powerful that is, the support that comes from your partner. We had our first boy in 2013. Ruben was born with a genetic brain disorder. You only knew if he was awake when he was hyperventilating. We had to resuscitate him I don't know how many times for the first 5 years of his life. We had to write like an end of life plan for him, but you only learn the resilience. It's okay to be vulnerable. You make the right choices, you have the right attitude. It's all organic, it all falls into place.
Sophie.
Hi.
Welcome to the Grind Diaries podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to me. We obviously know each other from a little way back. We went to the same school, but we're in different years.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of history of, kind of youngsters going out partying quite a lot. Yeah. So it's been really nice to kind of, watch you grow with your family and, all of the stuff that you've done in your career. It's been great to watch. So congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
COO of a fintech company.
Yeah.
Happily married, family of 3.
Yeah.
Driving a Porsche.
Yeah. I can't help myself. Yeah.
How have you, how do you feel about how you've got there? I mean, it's an impressive journey, right?
Yeah. It's been turbulent, 100%. And I think super grateful, super aware of kind of some of the bumpy bits and some of the things we've been through all of it. But yeah, I think it's been an amazing journey, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things for me. It's constantly the journey.
Yeah.
I know we were catching up on the way up, so yeah, I know we've known each other for many years, but haven't seen each other for a while.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. But yeah, thinking back to the journey, there's parts of it you forget happened almost, and you sort of feel like it was another life, weirdly. But yeah, I think it's all about the journey. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because we have this conversation a lot on this podcast, and it's, everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
Everybody's been through a journey, and I think, like you say, you kind of forget. You kind of forget all those bits that you go through, and you think it's normal.
Yeah.
But when you look back, you do kind of go, I don't know how I got through that.
So much. It'd be weird.
Crazy.
I mean, talking about it, it'd be lovely to talk about it today and actually prep in for today, and prep in as in loosely, because I know this is it's all about being relaxed and talking, just because people need to relate to this stuff. We all go through our stories, but it's been nice to reflect on what my life has been like, because you sort of sit back and life's so busy, you don't really get the time to go, I went through that and that happened and we did this and we did, all of these different things, and oh yeah, that happened. Oh God, I remember when that happened. So it's been really nice to reflect on life and think about what has been important, what hasn't, what did I learn, how did I cope with something like that, and then where I am today and why is quite interesting.
We kind of get caught up, don't we, in thinking about the future and the present, like I want this or I want to get there, or and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to kind of push ourselves further without stopping and taking stock of where we've been and where we are right now. And I do that, it's like gratitude and whatever, but I do it quite a lot. I kind of really have to stop and shake myself almost and be like, come on, you've got to, it's great that people want to move in that direction, and it's great that people want to better themselves all the time. But when it gets to a point where it's like feels almost depressing, doesn't it? Because you're not getting you're not getting to where you want to be quick enough. Almost that's kind of the mindset I go through. It is sometimes you do need to stop and you need to look back and you need to go, I've done all right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well I think sometimes we're always trying to get to a destination. and forgetting about actually, and I know you're going to ask some questions about success and things. It's not actually the destination. That's the thing. It's if you keep thinking, oh, I'll be happy when I get there, or that's when I'm really successful. It's actually how you're achieving every day, like what you're doing, how you're moving forwards, putting one step in front of the other.
Yeah.
That to me is like way more important.
Yeah.
And but like you say, it's so hard to reflect. It's so hard. And weirdly, I started business coaching or having a business coach, and it's the first time I've had a business coach. Last year. And the first thing I learned was reflection, because I realised I just wasn't doing it at all. And like, it was so powerful. It's been really, really helpful.
Yeah. So what is your definition of success then?
I've found this so difficult, and I watched like some of your past podcasts as well. But to me, like, success happens pretty much every day. It's not a destination, and it's not something I'm striving for almost. It's something that just happens all the time. And for me, you have to fail for success. So you have to try things. You have to find things difficult. You have to go through experiences to be able to be successful. Happiness is a really, really important thing for me, but I'm really aware that happiness is something that I drive. I don't rely on anyone else or anything else to make me happy. I need things to fill my cup, but I think realizing that I'm the person responsible for my happiness has been really, really useful. And I think that also drives my feeling of success, because if I kind of take a breath and I'm happy, and I'm healthy, that's what's really important to me, and that my family are happy and healthy as well.
So what's your kind of strategy for that then? If you're kind of self-reliant on happiness, which is a real superpower, right? Because you're independent and you're not looking to anybody else to kind of make you happy.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, how do you make sure that you're on track for that?
Weirdly, it's almost easier because you don't have to rely on anyone else. Like, don't get me wrong, like, people can make me sad, as in, things can happen in my, like, things outside of my control, and then I'll feel sadness or frustration or, all of the other feelings. But it's always is how you react to it, and that's how you can drive forward. There was I was a business mentor and coach for a while, just after having Rubes and my eldest son, and I did some training with a guy, Joe, who was amazing, and he taught me one of a really good equation that I do genuinely try and apply most days, which is E plus R equals O, and it's the event plus your reaction gives you your outcome. So basically, whatever you're faced with, and me and Mike do it, like, we laugh about it sometimes, because it's like, the mother-in-law's coming over and you could get really grumpy about it and be like, oh no, like, we got to do this again, or or Mike wants to go do something that I don't want to go do, or I want to do something he doesn't want to do. We could both get real grumpy with each other and be like, no, like, I don't want to do that, I'm gonna have a rubbish day, and be really grumpy about it and make it rubbish for your husband, your kids, and have a rubbish day, and that's the outcome. Or you go, I don't really want to do that. But then in your head, you think about, well, how can I make it fun as well? How do I have fun myself? It's my choice. So therefore my reaction is, all right, yeah, okay, we'll go do it. And then you lift it up. You just, So I think realizing that you're not reliant on anyone else, it's up to you how you react to that event. I do not get it right all the time. There's still times I'm like, I really don't want to do that, and I'll get crazy about it, and it's not always the great outcome. But just having that conscious ability to go, I'm in charge of this. Like, it's my choice. It's not anybody else's.
Yeah, I like that. E plus R equals O. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah,
I'm going to remember that, because it's something that I kind of teach my kids, in that it's not the outcome that's necessarily the thing, it's how you react to it.
Yeah.
So it's a similar thing, isn't it? Yeah. Like, it's not failing at something, it's how you react to that failure.
Yeah.
And me and my son talk about it quite a lot from a football perspective. He plays a lot of football. He'll try things on the football pitch, and if it doesn't come off, and then he beats himself up about it, he's going to play worse. So it's kind of similar. I like that. Is.
And I think the other one, this is a really new one actually. It was my husband, Mike, was telling me about it last week, that he'd heard about it, that someone was on a podcast, super, super successful, and I can't remember names or anything, so sorry if I'm plagiarizing something. But basically the dad asked the daughter every day, what did you fail at today? And when the daughter was growing up, it was a bit like, all right, Dad, I don't want to really talk about my failures every day. But what it taught her was it was okay to fail, because you need to fail to be able to get stronger and learn and get better at things. And I think our kids today, life is I say this, we were talking about it on the way up, whether it's a generational thing or not, I don't know. I think life's a lot easier now, everything's so much more accessible.
Yeah.
But I suppose the demand makes it harder. You're constantly in demand. But like with Willow, my daughter, we constantly talk about, now this week, because this is such a recent thing, I've been saying to her, what did you fail at today, darling? Like what happened? And she's like, and it doesn't bother her. She goes, maths, mum, never guess what happened today. And then we start talking about it. So it's really nice because you have something. She's only 7. So if you say to her, how was your day? She's like, oh, all right, thanks. Whereas now I say to her, what did you fail at today? And she'll be like, maths or DT or English. And I failed my spellings and blah, 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 blah. And then you can drill in and be like, how did that make you feel? What do you reckon you could do differently? And well done for failing, man, because it means you tried. And that in life is the most important thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, again, maybe a generational thing, but it was always like failure was almost demonized when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And it was, and I've really learnt the hard way with it, because it has 100% held me back a lot in life.
Really?
Like I remember, I can probably go back. Well, Riley's going to be 18 this year. I reckon I can go back about 18 years to business plans that I'd physically written down.
Yeah.
I was that convinced that it would work, but it never got any further than that piece of paper that I wrote it on, because I didn't know what to do and I was too scared of failing. And I actually remember being embarrassed by it, as in, I want to do this, but I don't want anyone to know it's me doing it.
Really?
Which is a really strange thing, isn't it? But that must have been held up by a fear of failure. So I think it's
massive.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? Like if you can get over that really early, like kids, that is a definite superpower.
I think it's odd though, because I think failure and losing, it needs to stoke a bit of a fire in your belly, rather than well, I'm rubbish, I can't do it. It needs to stoke your energy and push you further. But it's still, you say all of this like you've got the gold, the silver bullet. It's not, I don't have the silver bullet, and my kids, I'm also going to make mistakes in parenting them, which, I think parenting is the hardest job in the world.
Yeah.
But I think just giving them some of the things I wish I'd known that I know now, and I know that's everyone says this, it's so true, but that self-belief, that knowledge that, okay, it's all right if I fail. Like you say, maybe it hasn't, maybe generationally we've been conditioned not to fail. Don't take the risk. If you risk your career, or you risk your earning ability, or your not integrity. Integrity is really, I would never risk my integrity, I guess. But taking risks has always been, don't do it. And therefore, you probably don't get the chance to fail. And we need chances to fail. And then you learn along the way as well. And just having the confidence going, it's okay. I'm okay. I've got the resilience. I know I'll pick myself back up again and crack on.
I do worry a little bit about this generation and the kind of non-competitive environment that they're being brought up in. That does worry me a little bit. I remember when Riley first started playing football and we weren't allowed to submit scores. There was no league table because everybody was a winner. And you kind of think, how are you, like, life's a competition.
Yeah.
So we're conditioning these kids to be like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's the participation that counts. And everyone's got to enjoy it and it's got to be inclusive.
Yeah.
But there's got to be, that you've got to have that element of competition.
Well, I think, how do you learn that resilience and that ability to persevere at something if you don't lose? So if you're always winning. I remember my godson growing up, because my godson's, he's just turned 17. And we were chatting, and I remember him going through all of that, no, I don't lose growing up. And I was sort of the harsh godmother. No, darling, you did lose. You did. And it's okay to lose. It's important to lose, because you'll learn what is important to you and what you want to strive to win next time. Like, why did you lose? How do you get better? But I agree. It's. I don't know if it's just we're cultivating this culture of just a lack of perseverance and an entitlement that, well, I just need it given to me. Like one of the things that was weirdly blew my brain. I was out for dinner with friends the other night, and we suddenly realised our children now have instant gratification.
Yeah.
And we were talking about watching Gladiators on a Saturday night, and the kids having to wait for, and it was delayed because of the rugby. So then we were watching the rugby, and it's like, oh, it'll be on in a bit. It's delayed tonight, And they were literally like, what? I've got to wait? And it's like, yeah, like you have to wait to watch your programme, because obviously now we just click, you get everything, that instant gratification. And I think therefore people expect to instantly get that job, instantly get the husband or the wife, they don't realise you've got to work at this stuff. You got to wait, you got to work, you got to figure out like how you're going to achieve these things. It's just not going to be at the click of a switch that you achieve it. Or
yeah, I mean that's the whole reason I started this podcast, if I'm being honest.
Really?
Yeah, I watch my children growing up looking at people, social media, pictures, videos, people driving fast cars on nice holidays, living in big apartments, and everybody makes it look so easy.
Yeah.
And I think the problem that you're going to get is that you'll get kids that are coming through thinking, I can go and get this Lamborghini, I can go and live in this lovely big apartment, I can go on holidays, and they're going to get to a point where they go for it and they fail at the first hurdle and go,
oh, they won't know how to cope.
Exactly.
They literally won't know where to dig deep or figure. Some will, because it'll be inherent, but others it'll be really hard for them.
Yeah.
And some of my colleagues and stuff, I find it amazing. I'm like, guys, it's a real privilege to have a job, and you should, prove yourself every day and be proud to prove yourself every day. That's what I do.
Yeah.
It doesn't get given to you.
No. Yeah, it's really important. I think, it does worry me. It does worry me. But I think, we're kind of in a position now where it's, beginning to become highlighted, and, the conversations are happening. Whereas I think when the conversations don't happen, that's when it's going to be a problem, because, kids are going out into the world thinking it's easy. And that, like, to me, that is a massive red flag.
Yeah.
And I think, you don't want to frighten them. You don't want to be like, but they need to be prepared. And my concern is that they're not going to be.
No.
They're going to be stepping out into the real world. I mean, we spoke about it on the way up here about my first job.
Yeah.
I was traumatizing.
Yeah.
Thinking back now, people would have got arrested. But it was just part of being in a new job, initiations and having the piss taken out of you, and all of that kind of stuff. It was tough, but not once did I ever think, oh, I'm not going into work today.
Yeah.
It was just, you just ploughed through, and my concern is that people hit that and go, oh, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we going to end up with?
Yeah.
But, all right. So take us back then. So, what kind of shaped you, talk about how your upbringing and your kind of school life and life after school, and how you've kind of ended up to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. So I guess going back to schooling, pretty standard schooling life, I think. I think I was part of, just quite a simple life, really. There was nothing negative. I wasn't bullied or in a bad place at school. I think, the classic light bullying, banter type stuff, like nothing crazy. My mum and dad broke up when I was, they broke up when I was 3, then they got back together again, and they broke up when I was 11. And I think that was quite a defining moment, because I think I think you watch some people you love go through hurt and break up. I think that's quite hard to be part of. I owe so much to my mum, like so much to my mum. She is one of the most incredible women who raised me and my sister like beautifully. I owe so much to my sister as well, one of my biggest cheerleaders and supporters through life. So I think the breakup weirdly did shape me a lot. Had kind of a turbulent relationship with my dad. Love him dearly. He's my dad. But we've had quite a turbulent, just up and down, I guess. I found it difficult, just coping with what he kind of put my mum through. So I think that was hard. But it kind of made me quite fierce. I think that's where it started building and fueling my resilience as a human. I was reasonably rebellious, sort of smoking and, bunking off school and stuff like that, which I look back to now, like we were saying, some of these bits that you talk about, and when you reflect, you sit there and go, God, why did I do that? And how, there's better ways to have coped with that, but you're facing things for the first time in your life. So you're dealing with it in a really raw way. You're just following kind of instincts. From 11 to sort of leaving Toynbee, I don't think they were bad years at all. Then I left Toynbee and I did go to college. I went and did performing arts. Singing was always my thing. I love drama. So I did performing arts at college. Did fine there. And then left college and I did start university. And I love my mum to pieces because, she supported me in going to university, but knew very early that I'm not an academic person, like at all. So I applied for a degree in performing arts. So that's the route I wanted to take. And I was singing in bands and doing sort of quite a lot of performing at that stage as well. So joined uni, lasted a whole semester and, term, and just was like, nah, this is not for me one little bit. So dropped out of uni. And then I was working in a hotel full time then I've done quite a lot of hotel work over the years. Started as a chambermaid at 15. So I've always been quite driven to be independent, financially independent. And again, I think that comes back to like my mum and dad, because my mum relied on my dad financially and then obviously had to become financially independent with 2 kids. And so I was very, very passionate about retaining a financial independence. So I started working at 15 as a chambermaid and then worked through the hotels, was on reception, and then I went as a bar manager. When I left uni, I worked full time at the hotel. So I was about 19, when I was about 19. And then I went through a really rubbish time. My boyfriend killed himself when I was 19.
Jeez.
Yeah, Andy. So, and I was the last person to see him alive. So it was like really, really tough. And we think it was depression. He didn't leave like a note or anything, but he took an overdose of like over 100 drugs. So he wanted to do it. And that's when I kind of, again, I was at the hotel and I was off sick for a while. Rightly so, but you're grieving. But again, at 19, you haven't got a clue. Like, you don't know how to deal with this stuff. Like, and as much as people want to help you too, it's not something that many people experience. So you don't really have the support around you. Well, you do, of course you do, but not necessarily people haven't been through it. So how do you know what to do? Mm. So, I was off work for a bit, but then I just, through grief and stuff, and my sister was actually away as well. She went to India for 3 months then. She went to do, she was in her uni course and she went to work in a hospital over in India. But I didn't want to tell her because I knew she'd come home, so I didn't want to delay, I didn't want to take away her experiences. And that was probably the hardest thing because we were really solid, like me and my sister growing up were, even though really we fought a lot too, we were proper soulmates, like we talked about everything.
So you physically hid that?
Yeah.
So you were still chatting throughout but never told her?
Never told her.
What was her reaction like when you
she was furious.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. In a lovely way, and she just wanted to be here to help me through it all. But she was only away for 3 months and she supported me in a way that she didn't know about, kind of thing. And then when she got home, like, she actually helped me sort myself out a lot more. So I went through the kind of classic, I say classic, I don't know if it's classic. I drank all the time, became quite bulimic, and I was put on antidepressants because obviously my mum was really worried with my reaction. It was quite a sort of, like, I think because I've always been reasonably rebellious, so when things were shit, I would kind of make it shitter rather than trying to make it a bit better. And then I was sort of I was sort of looking a bit of a state, obviously lost quite a lot of weight and drinking a lot, and it was a bit dramatic. So then when my sister got home, I think that really helped kind of reevaluate what I was doing and actually start talking about what I was doing. I wasn't really telling anyone, even though people kind of knew. But I think, you know, you are going through a massive trauma. Antidepressants did not help me because they were numbing, totally numbing of something I needed to actually cope with. I actually ended up went on a couple of holidays. I think weirdly I got spiked on a holiday and I ended up in a hospital in Greece with a friend, and very traumatic, a bit of a mess. Yeah. And then I think when I got home from that, I ended up in hospital again here. Well, I know I did. And I was, all my counts in my body were just all over the place because I wasn't looking after myself. And then that's when I was a big shake up. And because I was in hospital for such a it was a good week, and no food or drink or anything, like it was all, on IV and stuff. And then I'd stopped taking the antidepressants, so I didn't go back on them. And actually, I think that was probably the best thing because it made me deal with it. You have to deal with stuff in life, and we all try. And I think that's probably some of the things that have helped me realize the choices you face and how you've got a choice. You can either just, you know, carry on living your life as a mess and not take control of it. And I say it's easy, or I make it sound easy. It's not easy, but you have to make those choices that might be uncomfortable and might be more difficult, but you still have to make those. You still have those choices to make. Do
you think it's, in a weird way, do you think it's important to go through that self-destruction phase?
It definitely was for me, yeah. I think, and now weirdly, whenever I go through tough times, I find that I can easily default back to trying to go on to self-destruct. But now I think once you have children, that choice gets taken away because, you know, it's not about you anymore. It's about them. And if and I know I heard you say it on one of your podcasts, and I totally related and really respected what you said. Like, it's not, I have to think about what I'm showing them. Like, if I self-destruct every time life gets hard, they're going to self-destruct every time life gets hard. And I haven't learned that from my mum or dad. It's just been my inherent behaviour. So, yeah, I think self-destruct's interesting. And I think going through tough times, I think you have to, one of the things I've learned actually probably in the last couple of years, learning to sit with things and actually sit and go, that is shit. That is a really shit thing. And I need to address it, and I need to be aware of it. So yeah, that shaped me a lot. And then, but it kind of gave me the kick up the arse I needed as well. I'd left uni, I was working in a hotel. That wasn't necessarily where I wanted my career to go. So yeah, then when I kind of got myself better, back on track, I decided I wanted to go work in a bank, and thought it was a really respectable job to go do. So went and got a job in retail banking, started with Halifax, and worked there for a few years, worked myself like through the roles and progressed up into, I think I was like a banking and savings advisor. I was definitely part of that PPI. Used to sell it all the time, insurance stuff. Yeah. Oops. But yeah, and then I went traveling and decided I was going to live in Australia. That's what I wanted to do. Then I came back and basically I need to find more money. I need more money, so I need a better job that pays me more money so I can go move away, like save a load of money and move. And that's funny enough when I found my career. So I found a job with RBS, NatWest, back in 2007. And so when I was reflecting on preparing for this, I was like, wow, I've had 20 years in financial services now, and I'm not even 40 yet. I'm like, that's, you know, it's pretty good going. We had, so I got a job with Halifax, did the retail, went traveling, came back, and then found a job with RBS. And then that's when I got into payments. So I'm a massive payment nerd now. I love it. I love how complicated payments are, and I love working in payments. So that's how it sparked, was working in RBS. Went my way through a few roles there, moved down to Bournemouth to look after more of the West Country in different offices, then got offered a job in London and was like, you know what? Yeah, let's go do London. And that was at the time. So when I moved to Bournemouth, that's when I met Mike, my husband. So that was 14 years ago now. That was also just definitely one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Like, he is somebody who just understands me and just elevates me every day. And you don't realize like how powerful that is, like the support that comes from your partner. And there's no, you know, of course we go through rough patches and things go up and down and so on, but he's always just had this huge faith and belief in me that I didn't even have in myself. Like, you know, and I backed myself reasonably, you know, in what I did, but he was, and he still is, like, he's incredible in all of those things.
Something we talk about a lot, actually.
Oh, really?
The power of a supportive partner.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you can't even begin to think about where you would be if you didn't have that,
it's
huge belief and support.
Yeah, it really couldn't. And I think, you did it. I think it was in the past podcast with, if you had a partner that perhaps, you know, either tried to pull you down or didn't quite believe you could do something and didn't try and like push you into the bits that you're good at. Like, to your point, you're not going to achieve all the great things that you could achieve if you don't build each other up. So I think it's been incredible, like the whole journey.
How did you meet him?
It's really weird. So I moved down to Bournemouth with a friend from Chandler's and he worked down in Bournemouth and I was working down in Bournemouth. So we decided we'd go rent a house down there, and we did a housewarming party for New Year's Eve. And Andy, the guy I moved in with, he'd been traveling in Peru and met two brothers, the Hill brothers, and had invited them down because they lived up in where we live now, up in Surrey, and invited them down to the party. They brought Mike, my husband, down with them, and they weren't even going to come to the party. It's just, you know, and you like all of the stars aligned, basically. You know, things happen for a reason. And he walked in, and he'll hate me for telling you this story because it's horror. Like when I look back, even I sit here and go, oh God. And me and the girls we were all quite drunk already by this time, and it was a pirate party, and I was dressed like, I know it's wrong, but literally the sluttiest pirate. I was just like, me and the girls were like, you know, the door opened and Mike and his two mates walked in, and literally as soon as I saw Mike, I was like, wow. And then I looked at my friend Kate and I literally said to her, I was like, shotgun. She was like, oh, and I know it's awful, but like, anyway. And then, literally we kind of kissed at midnight, and then, they stayed down for another couple of days, and then we just built our relationship up from that day on. And we were both very happily single, which is really interesting because I think like neither of us were looking for a relationship. And there's been so many within that first year. There were so many times we could have broken up with the distance. Like he did move down in the September with the distance, but also with just our different lives. We led such different lives. I was in corporate banking and he was a groundsman of a cricket club, and he was only 21 and I was 25. And it's like we both just had very, very different priorities in life.
Do you think that helped though in the end? That distance, that kind of...
Yeah, probably. That's a really good question. I think probably because it actually, you kind of learn really quickly. You go through a lot harder times and a lot more intense times in a shorter period, I guess. So because when you see each other, you're together for, you know, even in the first couple of months, we'd be together for a week at a time. And it's like, that's probably, you're probably right. You build that strength, you build those connections quicker than you would if you both lived down the road, and it'd be easier not to see each other kind of thing, whereas you'd make the effort and you do it. So maybe you're right.
Yeah, my parents have got a really, really strong relationship. And I'm convinced it's down to the fact that my dad was just never home. He was always away with work. Yeah. So he's a lorry driver. So he'd probably be home like once or twice a week. Yeah. It's interesting topic though.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. So, so meeting Mike was great and really, really important to everything. And then, so my job moved to London, and I was still working for RBS NatWest. I was with them for all through the financial crisis in 2007. That was fun. But weirdly, that also taught me a lot. Because I think people in the financial services industry, you're very used to earning good money and getting good bonuses and living like that. But because I joined corporate banking literally at the same year as the financial crisis hitting, I was fortunate enough never to be reliant on a bonus. They were always bonuses, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas I think lots of people in the financial services and working in those environments, you become reliant on them. And then Mike and I decided to have a baby. That was a big change. When my job moved to London, sort of progressed through, was sort of managing a team of cash management consultants. We decided to have a baby. So, and I remember that being really odd because Mike was younger than me and I was older. So I always thought in my head, like, we would have kids later. But he was like, no, let's have kids earlier. Like, cause then we can have kids and we can, similar to what you were saying on the way up, like you have your kids young and then actually you're still young enough to go traveling or go do what you want to do with money kind of thing. You've already, you kind of get to a different stage. So we had our first boy in 2013 and we had Ruben, and that was the next kind of piece in life that was just not the expected journey that we kind of went through. So Ruben was born with a genetic brain disorder called Joubert syndrome, which is really, really rare. When we had him, there was about 1,500 known cases in the world. So we went through just a mind-blowing time. For the first 6 weeks of his life was just another world. Like he had some symptoms. I say symptoms, just what's the word I'm looking for? The symptoms of the syndrome. But he didn't open his eyes for the first 2 weeks of his life. He was really floppy as a baby. He was very pale and kind of dusky, so sort of like very bluey eyes and blue around the mouth. He had the worst reflux. You literally have to hold him sort of sitting up and you would be feeding him and it was, half would be coming out and then he would just vomit and he would just be in the most pain all the time. You only knew if he was awake when he was hyperventilating. The rest of the time, because he didn't open his eyes, you wouldn't know what was going on. And I kept going to the doctors and saying, I need some help. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't think he's well. And when he did open his eyes, he could only open them very fractionally. And he had a nystagmus, so his eye would twitch a lot and move from side to side. So we saw all these signs, and Mike and I were also getting zero sleep and, trying to become first-time parents as well. And I just getting told there was nothing wrong with him and that I actually had a problem and it was me and I had postnatal depression.
Really?
I look back. But funny enough, the last 10 years have just been the same. We repeatedly get told it's us and not, the syndrome or something else. So it's been a really, really hard journey and it continues to be, which is a real shame because I think we have such an incredible infrastructure in the NHS, but it's just so stretched. It doesn't work for really complex medical syndromes and stuff. So we had Rubes. We went through stuff that you just never ever think you're going to go through with your child. So we had to resuscitate him. I don't know how many times for the first probably 5 years of his life.
You had to do that?
Yeah.
Were you taught to do that?
Yeah, we were actually. So when I kept going back and forth to the doctors where I lived, which was up in Surrey, I asked for 24 hours in hospital and then, can we just come in for 24 hours? And they were like, it doesn't happen in the real world. You need to sort yourself out kind of thing with postnatal depression. And I was like, okay, I'm going crazy here. And then you start thinking you are going crazy. I'm crazy. Like, this isn't right. But I had a great support network around as well. Like, and Mike was like, this isn't right. Like this, we need help. And, and then I came down to my mum's in Winchester and literally that night was the first night Rubes, he went very stiff and stopped breathing. But for a moment, so he was only 5 weeks old, so his whole body just went rigid and he was just very blue. And I was like, and then he started breathing again. And I was like, Mum, did you see that? She was like, yeah. I was like, we're definitely going to the doctor tomorrow, yeah? She was like, yeah. And I'd sleep next to him and I'd just be like checking on him all the time. And then we went to Mum's local doctors and within 5 minutes, the doctor turned around and said, I think you might have something called floppy larynx, but I'm quite concerned how he breathes. So would you go home, pack a bag, go to Winchester Hospital? I think I want you in there for 24 hours. And I was like, yes, finally, like someone's listening.
So 5 weeks
before
anybody took your concern seriously?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Well, funny enough, we've been going through like this stuff recently with Rubes with his gastroenterology issues, and it's been 4 years.
Oh my God.
We go back and forth a lot. So, yeah, we went in, then we were in Winchester Hospital. He was on oxygen within half an hour. We were sort of, I remember a doctor called Dr. Shapira. I never saw him again, but he was incredible. And he just literally said, he took me aside and he said, look, I need you to keep an open mind. I think you're about to start on a very long journey and you need to keep an open mind. You're going to learn a lot, but you can do it. And I was like, thank you. Like it was, again, I was like, finally, like I knew I wasn't going crazy and like they were listening. I'm literally getting goosebumps talking about this. Yeah, so then I'll try and keep it reasonably succinct because 10 years is a long journey. But yeah, we were then, they did some scans of his brain and some scans of him. And then we were kind of blue lights up to Tooting in St George's, and we were there for 6 weeks, just learning more about his condition because it's everything is affected. His sight, his hearing's really good, and his sight now, like I look at him, he's still he's visually impaired, but he knows everything. He knows everything that's going on, and his charisma and his attitude to life is it just inspires you every day. And that's not me just blowing smoke. It's literally, when you meet him, you love him. You fall in love with him straight away. He's just brilliant. And the life he's had to fight is incredible. But so we went through a lot of diagnosis, and then he was we didn't go through any more of the breathing. We did go through the breathing stuff, and that's when we were taught how to resuscitate. So we were taught on sort of the dummies. But a lot of the time with Ruben, you could rub his chest and he would start breathing again. So literally just a little rub of the chest and he would start breathing. And but then as he got older, they would last a lot longer, and you had to do full rescue breaths, and we had to do compressions. I remember the first time I had to do it, I just absolutely went mental, and I couldn't. It was, of course, it's never in a good place. But it was a family do. My whole family is there, and I remember saying the F word in front of my grandma. And just losing my mind about stuff, and you didn't do it very well, but unfortunately got incredibly well versed at it, and now I'm pretty confident in having to resuscitate a child. And you have to go through things you just don't expect. So because when he would stop breathing, they went for longer periods. So there was probably one over 15 minutes, which is really traumatic. But because we were so well equipped, like we had an ambu bag, so you're just putting oxygen into him straight away. So even if he's not actively taking the breaths, none of his heart ever stopped. He's never had like a full, I don't know what they're actually called, but he's not breathing. So he would die if he didn't do it, obviously. But because we've always got the equipment, you're just straight on bagging so that he gets the oxygen immediately. So he doesn't, it does damage him. There is a trauma, but it's not as bad. But then after these, we had a couple of quite long events. We had to write like an end-of-life plan for him. And to write an end-of-life plan for your child is just, you just can't imagine it. Reasonably, I want to tap my head because I never like saying it, but we haven't had any events for about 5 years, which is really good. He went on oxygen for 5 years. So how he presents now is he's non-verbal, but he signs and we all sign. So we all use Makaton. He does communicate like in other ways as well, so lots of noises and just like telling you where to go and what to do. He's tube fed. He was on oxygen for 5 years. We've just come off that, which is really cool because his breathing's getting stronger. And he's in a wheelchair as well. So yeah, there's lots. It's definitely a different journey to have a disabled child. And I think for Mike and I and our relationship, relationships are hard enough. And I can't remember what the stats are now. Are they like 2 out of 4 end in divorce or something like that? I think it's like 3.5 out of 4 end in divorce with disabled children. But it's brought Mike and I like closer together without a doubt. I did say when we had Rubes, and because it's genetics, and Mike and I both carry these funky genes that we didn't know about, put them together, and we've got a 1 in 4 chance in every baby having the syndrome. So when we found that out, I was like, no more children. I'm not playing God. I don't want to play God with our children. Like, it's not fair. And I'm not resuscitating another child, and I'm not watching them have to struggle to live. And he doesn't struggle to live now, and I'm not, like I said, like he is just awesome. Like he's so full of life, and he's into everything. Like he's got an opinion on everything, and he's the boss of our family. Like, and it's hilarious. But yeah, I said no more children. And Mike said in a much nicer way than I'm going to say it now, but he literally said that's quite selfish if we don't have more children, because one of the best things you can give, I think, you know, he and I believe, and everyone's open to their own opinions, but is giving your child a network, and your network comes blood's thicker than water. So that was our belief, and absolutely true. So I said, well, if we do one more, we're going to do two more, because I don't want another child to have to deal with this on their own, because also we don't know what his life expectancy is. We don't know what is going to happen. So he said, yeah, okay, if we do this, and we were going to go down IVF, because then you can control whether the embryo has the condition. But then I had some friends who went through IVF, and just the trauma that your body goes through, and it can be, when you can fall pregnant naturally, it's very difficult for your body to accept IVF as well, apparently. So we decided we'd sort of risk, it sounds a bit funny, but we would try and fall pregnant, and then if the baby had Joubert syndrome, we would terminate and move forward. So we were really, really fortunate with Willow. So our first attempt was, she carries Mike's gene, but not my gene. So she's not affected by it. So she's now 7 and just the best kid ever. Like, she is just such a blend of Mike and I. So she gives us a run for our money all the time. She's so full of care and fun, and yeah, she's brilliant. And actually having a Rubes for a brother is amazing. Like, it's teaching her so much more than we could ever do. And then both Mike and I were like, yeah, we're kind of done. I was very excited. Like, obviously, you know what it's like having kids and careers and all of these things. I will go back to my career in a second as well. So then, and then we were like, no, we know we need to, and we've always wanted to. So then we went ahead and tried again, but unfortunately the baby did have Joubert syndrome, so they were affected. So we had a termination, which was really, I don't know, I don't want to say easy, because that sounds really, really inhumane and rubbish. I don't mean easy, but because we had a Rubes and I watched what he had to suffer with, and also our family and friends and us as humans, like, it's not fair. Yeah, I didn't feel fair to bring another child into the world with the same syndrome for all of us. It would just be, not fair on Rubes even, because then you'd have to split yourself even further. So then we terminated, and then we were fortunate enough to fall pregnant again. And then we had Ezra back in 2020. So he's a COVID baby, and he's 3 now. So that's our children and the journey we went on for them. It's been. So
how old's Ruben now?
10.
10. So you've got 10, 7, 3.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big.
I know. Yeah. It's
big spread.
Big spread. And I don't know that we didn't plan it like that. It kind of just happened. But I think that's been quite nice as well. We didn't put pressure on what or when. We just, because going from 1 to 2 is hard enough. But with Ruben, it was, again, he's now, so he has 2 to 1 care. He's full on. So he needs help with everything, like communicating, personal care, feeding. Like, he doesn't do anything for himself, and his behaviours can be quite extreme. So it's been, it's full on. It's really full on.
When you say his behaviour is quite extreme, can you describe that? Yeah,
so he self-harms a lot. So he'll hurt himself. So lots of head banging, lots of kicking, hitting, anything he can. And he'll go for you as well. One of the worst ones was when he was 2 to 3.5 roughly. It was just so extreme, but you find out loads. I've learned so much about the medical world and our bodies and how things all work. But from that age, the brain actually physically doubles in size and capability. So from the age of 2, they talk about terrible twos. It is a genuine medical thing, because your brain and your capacity within your brain doubles. So he went through that, which was even harder for him. But at the same time, his behaviours were insane, like insane. Every day, these screaming, shouting, and he used to bite himself. So he would bite his wrists, and he bit them to raw, like bleeding. Like, he took his flesh off, and he would go back to it all the time. So there'd be blood everywhere. There'd be him screaming. You just feel like you're because it's such a natural reaction. If someone hits you, you want to hit them back. Even if it's, you know, if it's your child, you're like, you don't hit, like, you know, you teach them, but you can't teach Ruben that, and you can't get angry at him. If he gets heightened and you get heightened, game over. Like you have to be so calm and keep a tone of relax, like, it's okay, Rubes, like, keep breathing, stay calm. And this was when he was stopping breathing all the time as well. So he would get himself into a state, then he'd stop breathing, and then he'd have to resuscitate. And
oh God,
the stuff that your brain is bouncing around your head, and you are just, it's like whiplash of emotion. And that's where, like, yeah, we've been through just so much, and it's just relentless. And I remember being in London, and it's when I was working for Barclays, and I got a phone call and Rubes had stopped breathing, and this was one of the first times, well, not the first times, but one that we hadn't had for a long time, and I had to get from Canary Wharf back to Epsom Hospital, and then there were train cancellations, there was everything, and you're just terrified, and you've just got nothing, but you just have to channel everything and be like, I ran outside London Bridge, and I'm like, taxi! I'm like, get me to Epsom Hospital as quickly as possible, and the guy was amazing, and like, he even, like, I did pay him, but like only like half. He was like, no, just chuck us 50 quid or something, whatever it was. No, you one of the beautiful things about our journey is you meet some incredible humans, and it gives your faith back in humanity. Sometimes it's not as great, but most of the time, like, you're just so grateful for people around you and the support. So yeah, it's and we still, Rubes has just been, like I say, the gastroenterology stuff, that's been a real struggle.
So what's that?
So it's basically constipation, but he can't commute. He doesn't really feel pain like we do. So he feels kind of the side effects of pain. So he knows something's not right and he feels crap, but he can't kind of go, my tummy's really hurting or my head hurts, or he'll just lash out. His behaviours just get extreme. And now he's a 10-year-old boy, he's like super tall. He can really hurt you and he can really hurt himself. So because he doesn't feel the pain, like, he'll headbang a concrete floor. Like, And it was, and I'm laughing in a funny way because, like, the kids, the other two, as they've grown up and learned, they'll watch him behave and therefore try to behave like him because they can see that we're having to drop everything to help him.
Yeah.
So they're like, hang on a minute, I'm going to do that. And the amount of times I've seen, like, my two go, fine, and they go to headbang the floor, and then they're like, oh, no,
yeah,
I'm not doing that again. Yeah. So it's been just insane. And like I said earlier, like, it's brought Mike and I together, like, so much. And we had to grow up pretty damn quick. Mike was only 25 when he had Rubes. And yeah, I was 29. And your life just changes more than I think having a typical kid, because you just got so much medical stuff, and prioritizing them and learning how to figure that stuff out. I've been really lucky. I did take out, a couple of years. So when I was at, so when I had Rubes, when we had Rubes, I decided to set up my own business, because that's a sensible thing to do when you go on maternity leave. So I set up a new business in business mentoring and coaching. And then we went on to, I did that for about a year and a half, but then that's when we were learning all the medical stuff as well, and it was not great. And then at the same time as me we knew we needed to move. We needed a house, like a bungalow, because we wanted it all inclusive. I got headhunted for a role in Barclays to go work for them. So I left being self-employed and went back to the corporate world. And then, yeah, all in the same year we got married, I'd started a new job, and then we moved house. So that was a big year in 2015.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then when I was only with Barclays for about a year. And then Mike's dad got diagnosed with cancer, my mum got diagnosed with cancer, and our carer had a mental breakdown. So then I decided to leave Barclays and become a full-time carer and mum. Full respect to everyone out there who can do that. Oh, it nearly killed me.
That must have been a big decision, though.
Yeah, huge. But it was the right decision at the time. Like, I wanted to be there for my mum, wanted to be there for Rubes, and obviously for Richard as well. And also as a family, like, my job was so much more demanding. Like, I would get up, and when I was at Barclays, for example, I didn't see Rubes for 5 days because I was up and out at 5. I wasn't back till 8. He's asleep. And then by the weekends, he's furious at me because he's like, well, where have you been, Mum? Like, he definitely couldn't understand it. So it wasn't. It was the right decision, 100%. And then we had Willow as well while I was off then. So it's probably for about 2 years that I wasn't working. Maybe a bit smaller than that. But it also helped me realise that I just couldn't do it. Because I think always in the back of your mind as a mum, well, certainly for me, I always challenged whether I was doing enough and maybe I should be a full-time mum and, those sorts of things. So being able to try it and try and be a full-time mum and carer, but very quickly realised I couldn't do it. And just, I was going crazy. Like my brain needed a very different engagement to be able to feel like I was fulfilled in any way. So I was just spinning out in my brain a lot, even though my children are everything and I love them more than anything. I'm just not the best at being a full-time mum. I'm a better mum by working. I certainly feel like that. So yeah, so I did that. And then after we'd had Willow, decided that I would go back to work, and Rubes was at school then, and we'd started to kind of find more carers and it was starting to work. So trying to get back into work was really hard. So now, like, whenever I can help anyone who's taken a career break, I will help them in every way I can. I think it's getting more acceptable now, but that was like 7 years ago that I did that.
So it's hard because you hadn't worked and people just weren't interested in taking somebody on that hadn't worked for a couple of years.
Yeah, basically that.
So how did you get around that in the end?
So I just, again, perseverance, I think, again, is probably a superpower that I hadn't realised I had, like the resilience. And again, Mike, he just kept telling me, Sophie, you're going to get the next one. Don't worry. We've got this. Like, he had more. And that was when my faith in myself was dwindling, and he was filling that up all the time. And then basically I reached out to an old, so the guy who ran the whole of the transaction bank for Barclays, he'd left just before I left Barclays. And I'd stayed in touch with him on LinkedIn, and I literally reached out. He put a post about this startup, and I was like, what are you doing? What is this? And I literally, it was probably after a couple of glasses of wine, and I've got a bit confident on LinkedIn, and I was like, hey, Michael, how you going? Like, it'd be great to catch up. What's this company all about? And he was like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, it'd be great to catch up. Come up for a drink, come for a coffee, and we'll catch up. So I met with him, and he's the CEO and founder of Form3, which is a payments fintech, super successful. It's been around now for 8 years, and I basically was part of their inception team. So we started talking, and I'd been in sales all my career, but I didn't want to go into sales because sales would involve a lot of travel, evenings, networking. You know what it's like. Sales is very demanding, out of hours as well, right? And because I had a young family, I was like, I wanted to see them. I did. I really wanted to be really present when I was there. So I didn't want to go into sales, but I still chatted with Adam, who was a CCO there, and we were talking about a role there. But then I was talking to Ema, who was a COO, about an operations role there. And operations has never been something I'd done before, but I'm a very organised. I was always the most organised salesperson. Like, always like, I need to get all my numbers, I need to get my stats. I was filling in spreadsheets all the time. Like, yeah, this is how I can do it. There's a formula here I can follow to get my targets. And so I've always been quite weirdly operationally aligned without me knowing about it. So then I was fortunate enough. I say fortunate enough, I don't actually know if anyone else applied. So who knows? But to be part of a fintech startup is insane. Like, coming from a corporate world into a startup environment is mental. So yeah, I started with them, was part of their team for 4 years, built out their whole operational function from scratch with some great people, taught me so much. And then basically I had Ezra, and then I spent a lot more time on myself. Like, I think knowing that we were going to have 3 children, I slowed down a bit on my career, not consciously or subconsciously, I don't know. And I think because you're going to have another one, I'm like, I know I need time out of my career, so I'll do that. And then as soon as I had Ezra, during my maternity or my time off, me and Mike had agreed that I'd have a day to myself every week that I could just do for myself development. So, and I remember listening, it was when this Diary of a CEO first started with Stephen Bartlett, and I was doing the ironing, and I weirdly found this podcast, and I was ironing in the conservatory, like, I think the sun was out, and I listened to this podcast, and I was like, oh my God, And I just started really triggering all these thoughts in my brain about what I was capable of and what I could do. And that weirdly kind of spurred me on. I just got back into these podcasts. I was reading all of the stuff around fintech news and what was going on in the fintech space. I knew I didn't want to go back to a corporate at all. And you debate that, because I think corporates, your career can still be really successful, and you still have to drive that, but you can also hide a little bit in corporate. So it's definitely more comfortable, I think, to be in a corporate, because if things were a bit shit, I could just go hide for a bit. And I suppose I didn't want to have that opportunity to be able to hide for a bit. I wanted to make myself uncomfortable. So I started applying for different roles in fintechs, but more like I was going for ops directors roles and COO roles, because I was like, why not? I could do it. I can definitely do it. And I'd had senior roles, I'd had management roles, but I was like, I know I can do it. I've got the right attitude. I've got the ethic. I can do it. And some of my friends at the time as well, they were really what I would deem as successful. And I was like, how did you do it? Why did you do that? Why did you, what? And actually asking them what they earn. Like, that was the other thing. Women particularly are awful at negotiating or asking for more money, or, a bit too grateful. Like, oh, thank you for paying us for all the work we've done. As opposed to going, hang on a minute, I can earn a bit more than that, or I can push myself harder.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I was thinking about this on the way up here, about the gender gap. Like, is it more of a thing in more senior roles, do you think?
Weirdly, no. I reckon it's the other way around.
You think it's...
Yeah, I think. Because I think to get into senior roles, you have to have that self-belief. You have to know, like, have your sponsors, but push yourself. And actually, I think women typically, and I know I'm making sweeping statements, but... And there's always outliers, and there's always, you can change all this stuff. But I think women typically, it's harder to push yourself. It's harder to have the confidence, harder to stand up again. I mean, the amount of men, I work in financial services. I'm typically the only woman in the room, even now. Like, not in the business I work in, but when I go to meetings, I'm typically the only woman. So there's still a big gap in gender in different roles. But weirdly, I reckon the salary thing, I think there's a bigger spotlight on senior roles to make sure that there isn't a gap.
Got ya.
Whereas I think lower down, because I remember talking to one of my friends, and he was like, every time he gets offered a job, he goes, yeah, it's fine. Another 10 on that, please. Like, put another 10 grand on, and then I'll come and work for you. And he would just do it by standard. Even if he thought it was a banging salary, he'd still chuck another 10 grand on it. Yeah. And like push for it. Whereas a woman would be like, oh yeah, thanks. Oh, you can, don't worry, you can probably knock a bit off if you want.
Yeah.
So since he said it, I was like, all right. I remember my last pay rise. I don't know if I should say this. Well, I can. I literally said, when they offered it to me, I said, what do you think? And they were like, it's not enough. And they went off and negotiated for me. So I think just having the confidence and knowledge of, you can ask for more, you're worth it, you give as much as everybody else. So always having the confidence to go, is that it? Like, is that, and actually having awareness of what is fair. Like, I don't want to be overpaid for what I do, because that's also not fair. But just making sure that you push to be leveled, I think, is the main thing. And yeah, I think lower down in roles, I actually think that's probably where you can get away with it more. And I don't know that that's right. Yeah,
it's a funny one, isn't it? It's not, obviously, being a male. And we're, me and Cara have got quite a traditional-ish relationship, in that, she was always the one that stayed at home and looked after the kids. And, even now, she's in a role is just really convenient. Yeah, she can walk to work and she enjoys it. She loves it. Yeah. And, so we've never really encountered it,
Yeah. But I bet she could probably push now, like, and be like, actually pay me more, like I'm worth more.
Yeah, I think she's at that point, now the kids are growing up a bit. I think she's definitely at that point where she keeps saying to me, I'm thinking about moving on. But the problem is she's done the same thing for like 10 years. So it's, that makes it really tricky as well, doesn't it?
I don't know, I think it's a mindset. I honestly think that she probably, or people around us think, well, you've done it for 10 years, like, you have to go do the same thing. Yeah. But again, having that confidence and being able to think about what of your skills are transferable. was chatting to someone the other day, and I loved it because they were talking about returners to work. So we were talking about how you get mums back to work, or people who've taken career breaks to look after elderly parents or whatever. And she said, I remember becoming a mum, I suddenly became the best negotiator in the world, because your kids are constantly like, I want this, I want that. And you're having to negotiate all day long.
Yeah.
And suddenly, when she went back into the workplace, she had new skills that she never knew she had. And I think just sitting back and actually, that's where I think even if like Cara, she fancied it, like getting a coach and actually having the time to look at what you've already achieved and what is transferable will help you build your confidence, and then help you when you're ready to go talk about something else, you've got it in a place where you've got comfortable with it as well. Because you don't want to bullshit. Everyone wants to be authentic. Otherwise you're going to fall over. And nobody enjoys, not having a true representation of themselves. So I think I think that's challenging. So,
I think like in my career, I've not had many bosses that are women. But the bosses that I've had that have been women have been brilliant.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Like, what's different about it?
I just think that they're easier to work with.
Really?
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, I've had some amazing male bosses, amazing. But, they just connect better. I think that's probably the word, like when,
really interesting.
when I've got a male boss that I always look up to, because that's really important to me. If I'm working for someone, I have to look up to them.
Yeah.
And I have to, want to be like them. That's quite important to me. And I think by doing that, there's, you kind of instill barriers between you and that person, because you kind of put them on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And I think what women are really good at is breaking those barriers down. Whereas men aren't as good at that.
Yeah.
They'll kind of, it's a, maybe a masculine thing where they like being that kind of, they like being on that pedestal, I guess. But I've always just seemed to have connected really well with the women that I've worked for in the past.
That's really good.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So, it's just interesting. I think there's not enough of it.
No.
But I think, is it because people look at you and go, you're a woman, I don't really want you being the boss of my company? Yeah. Or is it more that, like you say, there's just that kind of, almost that confidence thing, it's generational maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's two things, probably more than two. I think obviously women typically, when you have babies, you need to take time out, and you want to take time out, whether it's 6 months or a year or longer. And I think that they're really crucial times in your career, typically when you have babies. And then funny enough, actually, the other thing I've learned loads more about recently is the menopause, and how much it just destroys people who, like women in senior roles, because all of the symptoms of menopause, so you basically can have just brain fog all the time. So you'll be in meetings and you physically can't talk. You're a very capable person, but and this is all hormonal. This isn't anything that anyone can control. So I think those two life events therefore make it harder, because they're typically in times in your careers where, from 40 to 50, there's another area in your life where you can stretch yourself and push yourself to go to more senior roles if you want to, or more demanding roles. And that's typically when you're going to get smashed by the menopause. Brilliant, thanks. Same when you're younger, when you've got the energy. It's typically the same time you're most fertile and you want to have your babies and all those things. So I think this time of life is really tricky. And the events that women need, you don't need to go through menopause, you have to. And then with babies, if you choose to have babies, it's that time of life. I also think women find it hard to push themselves. So men will always look at a job spec and go, I can do 3 out of the 5. No bother, I can do 2 out of the 5. I can do that. Women will look at that and go, I need to do 5 out of 5. At best, I'll push myself if I can only do 4 out of 5. They would never be confident. They would typically not push themselves. They would need the evidence that they could deliver it before they'd go into the role. And therefore, they don't put themselves forward for those roles. I weirdly think what we were talking about on the way up about just not inclusive environments without people knowing. So we were talking about drinking and being in a pub environment. And I as soon as I had rubes, like if I was out and about, I wanted to go home. I want to go and see my child. Like I had a maternal tug.
Yeah.
So, which I think is just a DNA thing. I don't necessarily, because like I always talk to Mike about it. I'm like, do you not get the tug to like come home? And he's like, no, I'm out, I'm going and I'm having some fun. So I think you miss out on being in decision points, and you miss out on networking in a very, social environment in the pub. And I think that's really tricky. And I still think that that's a problem now. I also don't think we're investing enough in bringing women and children, like as in our daughters, saying to them, you can do anything. If you want to go work in science, you want to be a gardener, you want to work in mechanics, you want to do anything that would typically be a man's job, coding, like especially, and working in a tech company. The company I work for now is incredible. I think we're about 40% women, and that's a tech company, a financial tech company, which typically are inherent men.
Yeah.
Like it's always men. And we're starting to see more and more of that come through, which is great. And we're very aware of inclusivity and just making, because also we have a very large Muslim culture, or Muslim, lots of Muslim colleagues amongst us. And we want to make sure that everyone's welcome to anything we're doing, and everybody feels they have a seat at the table. But I think organisations just don't. When I did a women's International Women's Day, and I did a sofa session with the company, and afterwards because I spoke about, I felt that it wasn't very inclusive at the pub. Like I just didn't want to be in the pub. Like I wanted to either do my work or go home and be with my family. And it was funny because then I caught up with some of the guys afterwards, and they were like, I never thought that wasn't. I never even realised, and they didn't, and nobody does. And I think that's half the battle. I think we just don't realise that we're not being inclusive, because also some women do enjoy that, and actually they're wired that way and they can enjoy those things and they want to, and that's fine, but not every woman is typical. But even you were saying earlier as well, there's times you're in an environment, I don't want to drink, but you're kind of pushed to drink. Yeah,
it's one of those weird ones, isn't it? And again, we did cover this on the way up here, but the person that's pushing it's not like they're doing it to be out of order. No. They're doing it because they really want you to join in the fun.
Yeah. And they think you can't have fun without it or something. Yeah.
It's all coming from a good place. So that's what I find the most difficult is when I'm in a situation and you've got like a group of mates and they're like, come on, this is going to be real fun.
Yeah.
They're not thinking, I want to really hurt your health. I want you to feel like shit for the next 3 days.
No.
They're not thinking that. They're thinking, I want you to come and have some, we want you to be part of this gang, and we want you to enjoy it like we're going to.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult.
Yeah. And it's also difficult because you will enjoy it. Like as in, of course you will in the moment.
Too much.
Yeah, a bit too much. Yeah. But we all do. And like, it's really tricky, the balance between, I think we're getting better. Definitely think from a boozy point of view, there's, much more inclusivity around that, and having lots of non-alcoholic beers, and no one really turning their nose up if somebody's not drinking. Typically we see it a bit more, but yeah, I think it's interesting. So
yeah. So all of this stuff then that like we've been chatting for about an hour, maybe a bit more. I've learned more about you than I have in the last like 20 years that we've known each other, which has been mental. But it all kind of stacks up. It all makes sense, and I think the resilience that you've spoken about, the things that you've had to, the challenges that you've had to overcome in your life have been, to lots of people, that's kind of, I don't know. I don't know if I could overcome what you've overcome. And I guess whilst, the things that you've had to overcome have been traumatic, it really makes it clear to like the person you are now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like all of those things must have contributed to making you the person you are. And you talk about the confidence of being the only woman in a meeting room, and do you, genuinely, do you think that you would be able to do that without all the stuff that you've kind of gone through?
No, I don't think so. And I think that, and I know you say like you don't think you could go through this stuff. It comes back to the E plus R equals O, the choices you make, the resilience, but you only learn the resilience. That's what I mean. I don't think I'd be here today without learning all these things. I also don't think I'd be here today without the backing of like my mum, my sister and Mike. Like their unrelenting support in being there when I need to have a big wobble and be like, like I can't do this. Like this isn't, we're not in a place of strength at the moment. Like, and learning that it's okay to be vulnerable. Like that's, I would say I've learned so much more about myself in the last 3 years, I reckon. So my husband went through a really tough time through 2019 and 2020. Just basically, he'd been the rock for the past 7 years of Rubes. And I'd had my wobbles through all of that, but he never did. He was like, no, Soph, we've got this. Come on, like, we're fine. Rubes is going to be fine. You're fine. We're fine. Like, he was just so positive and pushed on. And then I just think it all became too much for him. And he went through a really, really traumatic time mentally. And I think for guys, again, I know we spoke about it earlier, I think men find this stuff even harder because although, and I say this in a really positive way, typically white men have a privilege that they are born into, and you see a white man and go, oh, it's a white man, of course, like that's what I expect from them. But therefore they have the pressure of that expectation as well, and not needing to have a feeling or cope with a feeling. Goodness, emotions, no, like that's not something. So I think he went through a really, really tough time, and we then both started therapy, started counselling, and we get it through a hospice. So we have help from a hospice because of Rubes it's a life-limiting condition that he has. We don't know what will happen, so we need that support for if the worst does happen, which I'm bloody hopeful it never does. And actually having that therapy, it was all at the right time. It was all the right, because I tried therapy in the past and it never worked for me. So even when Andy died, I had therapy and I was just like, oh, this is just bullshit.
Yeah.
But it was the right time and the right person. And she's helped me be enough and be confident that I am enough in everything I do. I'm enough for my children as a mum. I'm enough at work. I'm enough for my husband. I'm enough for myself. Like, and learning that stuff and being willing to sit with some of the stuff that you want to put in a box and go, well, I can't control it. I'm not even talking about it. No. And pulling those things out and actually dealing with them has helped me loads. But I think this is it, like we were saying earlier, like I look back at when I knew you back in, whatever years they were, but when we were kids and, in our 20s, and it was like another life. And I don't regret any of that life. It was brilliant. And that taught me enough to be who I am today. And I'll continue, in 20 years' time, I'll sit here and go, bloody hell, when I was nearly 40, I thought I knew everything. And now look, I've learned all of this stuff. And that's what I mean by the journey. And I'm really curious. I think that's another good thing. A superpower in people is curiosity. Like, why is it that way? Or just because Rubes is disabled, it doesn't mean that we have to live a life where he lives in a room and we don't have a family and we don't go out, even though it's difficult. I push boundaries, I think, and the curiosity of why can't things be in a different way, or why is it like that? It can be different. I think that helps.
Yeah. And do you find like things that as a normal family we would feel like quite normal, I guess, like going on holiday is much more of a challenge for you guys. So how do you overcome that? How do you kind of make that normal for your family?
Holidays are really funny. We've struggled with these a lot because we won't fly with Rubes because of his breathing condition.
Okay.
And also because he's so medically, last year we probably spent about a week a month in hospital. Right. He's still very medically dependent. Although this year started incredibly well, like we've barely been in hospital. It's been amazing and it's going to continue. So we haven't really holidayed. So we've done a few holidays, the four of us. So taking Ezra and Willow and me and Mike. But the gorgeous thing is that Rubes then has his carers move in and they're at home and he has his own holiday. So and he can do those things. We did a family holiday last year. But I think anyway, young kids, is it a holiday? As in they constantly need everything. Yeah. You're up early, you're doing stuff like a 3-year-old, he was 2 when we went on holiday, and a 5-year-old, like you're just constantly on anyway. But holidays are really hard. And I feel that's always the guilt, because if you go on holiday without them or you do it, it's just, you feel like you're wrong. You're wrong doing it all.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, isn't it? But like you say, young kids is...
Yeah, I think it would change as they get older. But the other thing, because again, therefore, in honesty, we haven't spent a lot of money on holidays. So we spend a lot of money on our house. So our house is our sanctuary.
Yeah.
And that's where we, have invested a lot of time and effort so that we always have a good time at home. Like we were that family in COVID that bought a hot tub, but we have so much fun in that hot tub and we use it all the time as a family. Like, so we do those sorts of things that you would normally spend the money on a holiday.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So I don't feel like we're missing out.
Yeah, decent. All right. So 3 little quick fire questions for you.
Yeah.
What 3 things, if you had to, look at your career and your life, what are the 3 things do you think that's got you to where you are today?
Crikey. I mean, immediately I think of resilience, curiosity, and constantly striving. Like, I don't stop. Like, I think there's always, and it's a blessing and a curse. There's always more, but it's not in a unsatisfied way. It's not that I'm not fulfilled in what I do today, but I'm like, oh, what's tomorrow going to bring?
Yeah.
It's like, it's an excitement almost for the next thing.
Yeah.
So I think, the 3 things, the resilience and the experiences I've been through have given me that. Like, there's a strength now that is amazing. Although, I've recently been through something that I touched on earlier with you, but that I wobbled more in that than ever. And I remember speaking to Mike and being like, I don't know if I've got this. Like, before, when things hit us, you're like, yeah, okay, I've got this. Like, this is how we'll tackle it. And it was something I didn't know how to tackle. So I think just being aware and able to know that I'm not through it all yet. None of us are. Like, there'll be other stuff. But yeah, so I think maybe perseverance is another one. You just never stop. You never... But again, I think the kids, as soon as you have a child, I think that choice is taken away from you. I can't stop. And I really don't want to stop either. Like, but...
It's funny, we touched on it on another podcast about how how I go from provider to inspirer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So now, all of the actions I'm taking are to try and inspire the kids, right? Yeah. Like, because they're looking at me now, they understand, what I'm doing and all the rest of it. And I think you spend a lot of time as a young person or a younger person thinking, I always want more.
Yeah.
But when I get to this point, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
And then you get to that point and it's a new phase. And now I'm like, I've got to keep going. Yeah. But like you say, it's like a blessing and a curse, because your mind's constantly on, but you genuinely wouldn't be the person that you are today without that.
No.
So
yeah,
it's quite interesting.
It was funny. I was been fortunate enough to recently this week I've been to an event. I've been listed on the Innovate Finance Women in FinTech Power List, which is, I know, I feel like a real rock
really
star,
cool.
man. Yeah. But it was weird because they push you quite hard to promote it, like, and promote that you've been listed. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm not an arrogant arse. Like, I do not want to be out there going boom, boom, boom. And even when we spoke about me coming on a podcast, I'm like, well, how do people want to hear from me? But then you channel it and go, if I can help anyone in any way be inspired or think differently about stuff, or know that it's a choice and that you can do anything, bloody great. And it's same for my kids. Like, I know I was telling, before I left, I said to my kids, I was like, guys, I'm going to go do a podcast. And like, Willow had already asked this week, she was like, why are you doing podcast? And I'm like, I've got a very interesting life, darling. But then I said to them, any tips? Like, what would I do? Because I thought, bring them on the journey as well. Like, because, why not? And Rubes was just, he just kind of laughed at me. And then Willow was like, talk about us. Talk about the kids. And I was like, I promise I will talk about you guys. I was like,
get clips of every time you've mentioned them and just make a little montage for them. Yeah,
she'd love it. She was like, make sure they know you love me. And I was like, I will, I promise. Like, and Ezra just, again, he was like, have fun, Mum, love you. I was like, love you too.
Brilliant.
life's all about the opportunities, and life's about taking everyone on that journey with you and helping them on their journey. I just think, inspiration. And it's not about being an arrogant arse. That's the other thing. There will be people that will go, no, I don't care. I don't want to listen to that. Or Sophie doesn't, I don't relate to Sophie in something. There'll be people at work, and like being a COO, there's some people who are just like, and I find it so hard. They're literally like, oh my God, you're the COO. And they don't know how to talk to me. And I'm going, I'm still Soph. I'm you. I'm just another version of you in a different way. And I think being relatable is powerful, but you're not relatable to everybody, and that's also okay.
What would you change about your journey if you could change anything?
My immediate response, my raw response is, I would love for Rubes not to go through what he goes through every day. Like that's one thing I'd change. But then would I be I suppose you can say it with hindsight easily, because I would change that. I would, even though it's taught me so much selfishly. I hate what he has to go through. But I think, I don't know. I think if I could, probably a better answer for myself and for others as well, I suppose, is there's a lot that I wish I'd known. And I think you've spoken about it in your previous podcast and maybe your other guests, but just being comfortable, just going, it's okay. It's all right. You're going to get things wrong. You're going to say the wrong thing. Something's going to happen, but it's going to be all right. You're not going to get the grades you want. You're not going to get the peace you want, but it all falls into place. You make the right choices. You have the right attitude. On you go. And it's a learn. Everything's a learn. And we try that now with our kids. We try and talk about it a lot with the kids, but yeah, everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, I think it's a real superpower, I think, and certainly something that I've learned recently, last few years, I'd say, to stop trying to please everyone, because that's the thing that holds a lot of people back so much. Like, it took me a while to realise that, I do things like I promote my podcast on my social media, and can you follow my podcast page, and you get like 9 people do it, and you're like, what's wrong with it? But then it's not for everyone. And and I think like overcoming that is a real power, and I think it takes a lot to get there, but like you say, you've got to be comfortable with it, because otherwise it's just going to do nothing but hold you back.
It's comfortable being uncomfortable. And then the other thing there, 2 things you said there that come back to the things we spoke about are perseverance as well. So like you said, the kids see all of these amazing cars and houses and think, I'm going to go out and get that. Of course, like they started with 9 people following their content, 10 people doing that. I know Andrew, who also I struggle calling Andrew, said on the last podcast around, or one of the podcasts, he was saying, the trolls and the abuse and the bullshit that comes when you actually put yourself out there. You just, again, it does and it doesn't matter, because some of the things that will matter, they'll just drive you into a different way. But as long as it's positive, that's the thing. We're always going to care what others think to a degree, but we'll be less concerned about the people we don't care about. And their opinions are theirs. Like, it's fine. I'm not going to influence everything. But yeah, I think just being aware of it's acting with your own integrity, your own values. Am I behaving in the way that I want to behave and I stand by and believe in? Or am I doing something in a different way just to please someone? That's not right.
Self-confidence thing as well, isn't it? Learning that actually I can keep going despite what these guys think and what they're saying. I can keep going. And again, Andy touched on that quite a lot in his in our conversation about how he really stayed disciplined, and just his eyes were on the bigger picture, and it was like the rest of it was noise. And I really quite like that. I think that's like so true. Why are we the goal is up here, why are we worrying about the stuff that's going on down here? And again, it's difficult, but it's really powerful if you can get into that mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it really is.
And what's next then? What's next for you?
God, I really don't know. No more children. I know that. I don't want any more kids. I love them all. I don't know. I really don't know. I really want Shield Pay. So I've been with Shield Pay for 2.5 years. I really want and can see there's just such a huge opportunity for Shield Pay. So I want to be part of that success story and really drive it in the right way. Yeah, I honestly don't know. And I think weirdly, I've always been like this. I've never had long-term plans. I know that I want to have a career. My career is very important to me, but I'm not dead set on, owning my own business, setting up an own business, being part of new businesses, or going back into a court. I don't mind. It will all make sense. Like as and when opportunities come, and when I want to find one, I can go do that. But yeah, I think a bit more of the same for a while. I'd like to do a little bit more reflection. I think it's taught me a lot. I want to spend time with my kids while they're young. And that's really, really important. Yeah, I don't actually have, which maybe is a bit boring. Maybe I need something, but I feel really good about it. I'm in a good place. And I want to do more of it.
Yeah, I don't think it's boring. I think, what you're saying is like, you're going to keep working, you're going to keep striving forward, and what comes. And I think that's, again, like we talked about it a few times on the last few podcasts about opportunities and spotting opportunities along the way. If you're that focused on a particular goal, there's a very good chance you're going to miss all of those other opportunities that present themselves on the way. Yeah. Whereas you're kind of like, I'm, just going to keep driving forward and see what happens. Yeah. I think it's good. I think that's a good place to be.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Weird, isn't it? You forget about, I think about all of the places I've ended up, and they're all through kind of organic. It's all organic in a way. You look for things, like I said about how I got into Form 3 and get into fintechs and startup environments. I don't know that I'd ever believed I would have done that. I think it all happens for a reason, and everything kind of makes sense. But yeah, I think being aware to opportunities and making the right choices, like thinking about them, giving them time of day to think about and reflect on, and then make the choices based on where you are at that date. Like otherwise, to your point, you're so focused on something. And to me, the fun bit is the journey. Yeah. That's what I was trying to get to earlier with the kind of success and the happiness. It's every day. Like this journey is insane. It's great. I love it. Like, and just making sure that you can keep on that journey and make the choices and be curious. That's what I think it is.
Brilliant. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I genuinely believe that you're a massive inspiration. When I, think about the challenges I've had as a parent trying to run a career, and I've not had to have half the battles that you've had alongside it. It's incredible what you've done. And I think that a lot of people that struggle with parenting, because that's a big spectrum, right?
It's huge.
I hope that a lot of people will listen to this that are going through struggles and listen to how you've kind of negotiated your way through everything, and I think they should take real inspiration from it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I hope so too. And then parenting, full respect to all the parents out there, it is the hardest job in the world, and learning every day and just trying to be the best version of yourself for your children is so powerful. So yeah, thank you.
Totally
Thanks
agree.
for having me.
No problem. Thanks, Sophie.
No worries.